Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network. My name is Justin Fensterman, also known as Fensty to some of the fantasyguru.com subscribers in Discord, filling in for Kyle Elfrink, but still with us. We all love him, our Oracle, Ray Flowers. What's going on, Ray? You're stuck with me for the next hour.
Well, it'll be fun, Justin. We've obviously done shows together for a long time, and used to produce my shows when we were on Sirius, and then we've done shows together, and so I don't think we're going to have too much trouble with the next, 50 minutes or so here on the old show today. We miss Kyle, of course, but we're happy to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Check is in the mail for saying that, Ray. But we're going to give everybody a healthy dose of sports. 3-sport varsity show. That's what we're giving you. We're going to start off a little bit of football, talking about Super Bowl 58. Then we're going to also talk about some baseball as Ray continues to churn out so many pieces of content, Ray, pages and pages of fantasy baseball content ready for all of you with the season coming up. And then, as always, on Fantasy Sports Daily, a little bit of basketball. Normally the guys bring me in to talk some basketball, so we're going to talk a lot of NBA. Why? The NBA trade deadline is actually this week. So in 48 hours, some of these teams are going to shift, and we're going to talk how the fallout could impact everyone, fantasy to betting, where it's going to be very educational. It's going to be a lot of fun. Going to talk some props as well. But Ray, I got to ask you, man, this is one of our first times talking about your 49ers being in the Super Bowl, a nice little rematch. I am excited as hell for this game. I am pumped up. I think it's going to live up to the expectations. I'm very happy that these two teams ended up on another platform. I had said that these two teams would end up in the Super Bowl. I will say this, by the time the playoffs began, I brought it back a little bit, thinking that the Ravens were going to make it. So wrong there, was right earlier in the season. That's why you got to stick with what you put, the line in the sand. Ray, how are you feeling, though, overall about the 49ers? Because the regular season, and we're going to go over some specifics with the tight end position, but the regular season 49ers, a little bit different from the playoff 49ers that we've seen. How are you feeling as a 49ers fan going in to face the mighty Mahomes?
We have a user question right before I get to that, though, Justin, since you're, here, Sal wants to know, you're wearing sleeves. That's your host attire?
That is my host attire because, I'm trying to keep it classy, but more importantly, it was about a month ago at this time, I took the sleeves and I put them back on the shirts because I'm trying to get in shape and I'm trying to notice the difference. I was blinding Ray and Kyle with my pale skin, no muscles. So when it's summertime in May, June, in that area, you will see the arms again, more built. I guarantee you that. My guarantee of the week, to quote Jimmy Jack, Jeff Mans.
So, yeah, Jeff Mans. You can't just hit it's a lock. It's a guarantee.
That's right.
Yeah, no, back to your question, Justin. Yeah, I'm excited about the Super Bowl. I mentioned this on the show yesterday. I'm kind of over the analysis part, to be honest, because I've moved on to baseball. I've kind of made that
message. 2 freaking weeks, Ray. That's why we're used to changing this stuff every day.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of that, but the Niners are a very interesting team, and you have all this time to analyze everything, right? And everyone does it, and all the stories are written, and the topics are discussed. And, the Niners, what they did in the last game was shocking. I myself thought they were going to lose the Lions because they got down, and it's like, this team looks terrible. There's nothing going on. And then they did the reverse of what they've always done. They've always jumped out in the lead, controlled the game flow, let their defense, chase down the quarterback in the second half, and they had to switch the whole thing up, and it worked. So, this is a situation where Mahomes and Andy Reid, they're the best duo going right now. They're the new Brady Belichick, right? So the Niners will have a tough battle here, and it's very hard to bet against the Chiefs. I didn't expect that they would get here either. I thought it'd be the Ravens like you did. But now that they're here, Justin, it's tough to bet against the Chiefs.
It is, and that's why it's a little bit surprising to me that they're underdogs. And I was actually on SiriusXM when the line opened after the conference championships, and the line first opened, and you start to go. It first went up, and then it went down. Now it's sticking there at 2. It does kind of surprise me, especially because Patrick Mahomes, and I know, Ray, you're going to roll your eyes because you probably heard this, if not read it 1,000 times, but we all know how good Mahomes has been regular season or the playoffs as an underdog. But even putting that aside, big game experience, the grandest stage of them all. He's been there again and again and again. And while that doesn't really fall in the analytics department as sports fans, to have that kind of big game experience where he's lost and he's won, that right there alone, to me, gives the Chiefs a leg up against the 49ers, and along with some of the defensive issues that we've seen from San Francisco, especially over the last few weeks.
I think that area that you're talking about, obviously, as you noted, is in the realm of the unknown because you can't quantify experience, right? I think it makes sense, but I also think back to, when I was an athlete, you were an athlete too when you were younger. When we were athletes, you'd be nervous before the game. Of course, you'd be nervous. And playing, week 3 would be totally different than in the playoffs. Yeah. But once the game gets going, like, I don't know. I wasn't, you know what I mean? It's like once you're playing, after you get rid of all the weeks and the interviews, once the snap and the whistle and the first hit, I don't know how much it matters. Maybe it does because, there certainly are players that seem like they could elevate themselves and their team in those pressure situations. Joe Montana famously, is that John Candy in the seats? Like then they go 90 yards for a touchdown to win the Super Bowl. Some guys just have that, and I think that clearly Mahomes has that. We're going to get a chance to see if Purdy has it, and that's when you're against the best. Which let's face it, Mahomes is the best. We can talk about his fantasy value and who's Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes is the best, and I think people are remembering that after doubting him pretty much for half the season in the fantasy space.
I feel like half the season this year and then half the season last year as well, Ray. I mean, you were answering Fantasy Sports Radio on Sirius XM Twitter questions, and we would always talk, and that's a big goof. Ray and I are always talking on the side when it comes to Ray's Twitter takeover every Sunday. I like Ray's reaction as well, and quite frankly, I like to hear who people are asking about over and over and over again. And Ray, it was every week, multiple Patrick Mahomes questions. And Ray, I think one of the weeks I kind of sided with the people, and then you stopped talking to me the rest of the day. So that was the last time I did that. But yeah, Ray, we all know how good Patrick Mahomes is. And this is where the reality sets into play here. And you're right, it is the unknown. And yeah, Brock Purdy could, after one drive, however it ends, with the score, with the turnover, he could kind of shake that rust or shake that fear and then be able to focus a little bit more. I'm just very excited to see, and just, man, a lot of just amazing talent in this Super Bowl as well. I mean, look, we're going to talk tight ends right now. I mean, Travis Kelce, he's Travis freaking Kelce, George Kittle. These are 2 top 5 names from even earlier in the year. And when you're looking at these guys, I mean, how productive should they be? And you look to see the defensive impact, and both of these teams did not let a lot of production up to tight ends here. But I'll say this, because I thought, if anything, it would be the Chiefs a little bit more. The 49ers actually allowing a little bit more on the receptions and receiving yards front than Kansas City. Kansas City, Ray, just allowed, I think it was 1 more touchdown during the regular season than the 49ers to tight ends. So both of these teams, very good defensively against opposing tight ends.
Yeah, and you always face the battle when you look at these numbers, because it matters when you're facing a team, and maybe guys beat up at the tight end position. Maybe you're beat up in the linebacker core when you're, so it's always a little difficult with the matchup numbers. It's also difficult because, there are tight ends that catch passes. There's Dalton Kincaid. It's going to catch passes, right? Then there are guys like Kelce and Kittle, which are primary drivers of their offense. And in the case of Kelce, as primary as you can get, right? There's no tight end in football that I think is more important to his offense than Travis Kelce. So you can look at the numbers there and say, okay, how applicable are they, given the importance of these guys in the offense? How applicable are they to Hall of Fame level talents? Because that's different than a guy who's really good, right? No offense to Dalton Kincaid, but he's not to those level of guys yet. So I think also that it's really interesting, because I believe, and I could be wrong on this, I believe the perception is the Niners defense is really good and the Chiefs are okay. And it's like, well, that's not really, the Chiefs defense is damn good. And there have been many games this season for the Chiefs where their offense hasn't been effective and their defense has kept them in games. And, you start talking about the Niners and I mean, it's always that push-pull battle, Justin, because both teams have looked at all the film. Both teams know exactly what the other team is going to try to do. It's very unlikely. There's a player or two these teams will probably pull out that they haven't run this year, but it's very unlikely they're going to drastically alter any part of their offense, right? Even with the 2 weeks of notice. And you can't get around getting the ball to Travis Kelce for the Chiefs. Like, you have to do that to win. The Niners can win without Kittle. Kittle can have 2 or 3 catches and have one of them be 50 yards down the seam for a touchdown, right? Make him a big play kind of guy. But both these guys are going to be involved, and they're going to be focuses both for their offense and for their defense.
No, absolutely. And here's the thing: when it comes to placing bets, and we're looking at the screen right now, both of them having 6.5, or rather 6.5 receptions for Kelce. That's the line right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Kittle at 3.5. By the way, both very much juiced up. And that's why when it comes to the Super Bowl, you got to make your bets early because they just keep creeping up and up and up. And now, look, I love the over 6.5 when it comes to that for Kelce, but it's so juiced up. So now I'm trying to think, do I go to the book and try to alt it up a little bit? But the books at this point, they've smartened up and know that a lot of people are going to look and say, hey, can this guy catch 8 passes here? And they're not going to give us the opportunity. They're going to alt it up a few receptions there to try to make us work for it. So that's why, Ray, being that it is the Super Bowl, normally I stay away from minus 140, minus 150. I mean, you all see in the betting sheets on fantasyguru.com's Discord for NBA bets that really I don't go beyond minus 130, minus 135 max. But in this game, in this case, man, I don't want this number going up anymore. So if I have to place a bigger investment on Kelce over 6.5, because like you said, Ray, not a normal tight end, focal point of this team's offense and just one of the best players to ever play at his position. He's going to find ways to get open, and Patrick Mahomes is going to find ways and force targets to him, at least in my opinion. Maybe he won't be catching 11 of 11, but he's going to be, if he's not getting 9+, then something's wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs race. So, I mean, with that, I'm loving that Kelce line so far. How do you feel about the Kelce 6.5 receptions?
What if Kadarius Toney plays, Justin? Doesn't that change your?
Oh my God, that all unders on Travis Kelce, man.
But I think that this is an interesting one. I think the number's fair. I think that 5 or 6 catches, I think is, as long as Kelce's healthy, that's there, right? And then it's up.
Right.
If he catches 2 or 3 passes, he's hurt or they've lost the game. Right. That's just so. That's a high number that I don't love. I'm not, I got to get 7 or 8 catches. I don't mind it because of, again, who he is in this offense and everything. I want to ask, would I take it? The odds aren't good enough. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just go in a different direction. And I think that's something I want to ask you about, Justin, is that our tendency, based upon my experience with folks, is to, look at some number with the props here, find some player that they love and go the over. Like, find the lowest number that they're comfortable with and go the over, whether it's receptions here or yardage there. What about going the under? Because there's a lot of things. I mean, as much as I say, Travis Kelce, if he gets hurt, Travis Kelce could break his ankle on the first play of the game. Patrick Mahomes could, think back what happened last year to the Niners against the Eagles. Brock Purdy broke his arm. That game was over. The Niners had no offense. What are your thoughts about taking the under? Because again, Jeff Mans talks about this too. A lot of times we get so focused on the over, maybe the under is a better way to bet.
No, and yes, and I'm with you there when it comes to betting the under. And I'm guilty of it, Ray. I'm guilty of it. I don't bet nearly as many unders. It's a very long differentiation with overs. I'm mainly an over better. But you're right about that. With Travis Kelce, though, that's if the Kittle number was a little bit higher, would bet the under. With Travis Kelce, though, man, it's a different playing field for him. Maybe I could be sold on it if you pick another player on the team, maybe Rashee Rice. But Travis Kelce, there are certain players I feel will get the ball forced to them. And when you talk about teams that are good at defending the tight ends, I mean, most of the teams that are playing against Travis Kelce are not going to be able to hold him down. Now, here's a common mistake that I think people will make, Ray, in their analysis. They're going to look back to the NFC Championship. They're going to be like, well, Sam Laporta, 9 for 97. But something I want to bring back up that you just said, and that's Travis Kelce is the focal point of this team's offense. While Sam Laporta is a big part of the offense, they've got other players that they're throwing to. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown there in Detroit that they're throwing to, which also big part, and maybe he's the focal point of that offense. The Chiefs, I don't think, have that luxury. They're zeroing in on Travis Kelce. The big question is, are the 49ers going to be able to adjust in time to, what do you put, 5 guys on him and make Rashee Rice open the entire time? That's just not going to happen, because I've seen this, Ray, and when I'm watching these football games, you think, well, this guy's burning them for reception after reception after reception. And it's not like a basketball court where it's a lot smaller of a space. It's a wider space of football field. And teams are focusing on not leaving parts of that field open. So they're not going to sacrifice. And if they got a player that's burning them for catch after catch, it's going to be very hard to adjust on the fly there.
Yeah, and it is tough, too, for the Niners, and I've mentioned this multiple times this week. When they lost Hufanga in the defensive backfield, things didn't unravel, but things got much more difficult for them back there. The Niners are strong up front. Dre Greenlaw, and Fred Warner are excellent linebackers in the middle, but the defensive backfield is wishy-washy. So even if the Niners were to focus more heavily on Kelce, which I assume they will, of course, do, they can still be beat deep. And I jokingly said, Kadarius Toney, but maybe it's MVS, right? With the big play, we saw that last time they were out there. The Niners are in that zone where they do a lot of things well, but they struggle in other areas. And you have to think that Mahomes and Andy Reid will be able to find those areas. And that's one of the things Kelce's always been great at, right? Is finding that spot, finding that zone. And Kelce's not the guy that's ripping off 40-yard touchdowns like he used to. But if he's constantly moving the chain 7 yards, 8 yards, 10 yards, you know how that goes. And they start running the clock, you start controlling the – so it'll be a tough challenge. And you noted this in the show notes that, the Niners gave up 9 catches to Laporta, and then Musgrave and Kraft caught 6 passes too.
Right.
So, 15 receptions with the tight end in 2 games is a lot. It's a lot. So that is an area that, that obviously will be one of the focal points of offense versus defense is what did the Niners do to slow down Travis Kelce? Or do they have some game plan that's like, all right, we know he's going to catch his 7 or 8 passes. We're just going to try to blanket everybody else and just keep him from having that huge 40-yard play.
Right. And that's the big thing. And by the way, I'll say this with Travis Kelce, something else with him. The strength that this guy has, especially that lower body strength, hard guy to take down as well. He'll bounce off of you. That's another big thing with Travis Kelce as well. When he's got the angle on you, you're not going to be able to get your arms around him. You watch this guy over and over again, and we've watched sports for as long as we have. You find what makes this guy stand out besides the stats. This guy is hard to take down. It will be, no matter what team is facing him, and that's why he's one of the best at his position. You asked about the unders.
Yep.
George Kittle. I can be sold on unders with George Kittle, and it's not just because of the playoffs. It's because San Francisco has so many weapons. They've got guys that can do multiple things. They've got receivers that can run. They've got running backs that can catch. And that's why, to me, it's harder for me when it comes to props, Ray, and maybe you have a better line on this than I do. It's hard for me to bet on props. I don't think I'm going to, at least at this point, I don't think I'm going to bet a single player prop for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm just, at this point, not sold. I've got one in the cooker for the Chiefs, but for the 49ers, they've just got so many weapons, man. It's hard to really decide who they're going to prioritize. And when I see Kittle, which this, by the way, this prop probably going up to 4.5 in the next day, I doubt it hits 5.5. But George Kittle, 5 receptions, that's not a lock. That's where I could see myself going under because they just got so many skilled offensive players that it's a who's who, and it's a game of musical chairs with the 49ers, which is why they're in the position that they're in. Besides that D.
Yeah, in the last 8 games that Kittle has played, he's had 1 game of 5 catches.
Right.
To your point. And, you look at 2 of the last 4 games, he's been over 80 yards. 2 of the last 4 games, he's been under 30 yards. So if he doesn't get that 40-yard catch that I hypothesized with Kelce, if he doesn't get that, it's just a blah effort. And it's not Kittle, like you said. He's doing so many things. He's blocking. He's an excellent. He's a better all-around tight end than Travis Kelce, right? He just is. But his role in the offense is not as pronounced because of the fact that you brought up with the weapons and all that. And the matchup is one where you don't ever forget about Kittle, but Kittle's that guy that you can always kind of turn to because you've got CMC who's going to get it. Ayuk's going to get it. Samuel's going to. These guys are going to get the ball. And it just takes that one play where Kittle slips a tackle. It just takes that one play where that linebacker takes a step in the wrong direction. You know what I mean? And then here he's going 60 yards to the house. That's probably what the Niners are looking at versus volume feeding Kittle in this game. I'd be very surprised if Kittle catches 8 passes in this game. Could happen, of course, right? But I don't think that would be the goal going in against this Chiefs defense. So I think that it's tough to, again, when you're a star level player, this is not Juwan Jennings. When you're a star level player, it's always difficult to say he's not going to catch 4 passes. He's going to catch 2 or 3 passes. You don't want to bet that, but I think the odds are probably leaning in that direction, barring something unforeseen happening in the game.
You mentioned Juwan Jennings, and I have to check what his prop is, but if his receptions prop is 1.5, man, I don't know. Might put a little very small wager on that. If it's 2.5, 3.5, forget about it. But if it's like 1.5, let's just say, is it 1.5?
At DraftKings, it's 1.5 plus 110.
You know what, man? Put $5 on that.
Get a 2 catch effort.
Why the hell not?
14.5 yards is the yardage prop too, and that's a minus 120.
You think they're really prepping for him? They've got so many other guys that they're focusing on. Mm-hmm. So let's say he's getting open, even if it's not something deep, then yeah, I mean, watch, there are going to be a bunch of people that put yardage props on him, and he's going to make one big catch for like 35 yards, and then everybody's going to be pounding their chest the entire time. Juwan Jennings is about to gain 1 million fans.
Juwan Jennings. You did mention that you have other props or other things to look at or not. You want to share that? Because I know you're a little more into that angle of things than I am, Justin.
Sure. So, Ray, ultimately, I mean, I've been toying with the over and the under in this game. Ultimately, I think the Chiefs are going to win. I mentioned that before. I've been really thinking for the first week. This is why I can't stand the 2 weeks, because I start to think deeper into my thoughts. I start to look into different things. And if you would have asked me maybe 5 days ago, I would have said, oh, bet the over, just go all over. But now I'm in this mindset of, let's say the 49ers or the Chiefs go up by like 1.5. It's like a 10-point game or something like that. They're going to overutilize their rushing attack to keep the other team off the field. And that's what scares me a little bit, because look at the last game in the AFC Championship. I mean, the Chiefs overutilize Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco wasn't running well at all, but you give the guys 24 carries and he could put together about 65, 70 yards on him. And that's why, Ray, once again, because I think that the Chiefs are going to win this game. I think the Chiefs aren't going to fall behind, and I think they'll be in the lead, especially after the first half, maybe not by a lot, but at least by a score. So I'm still thinking that in the second half, you're going to see more Pacheco. So also, by the way, seeing San Francisco have multiple running backs in the playoffs averaging over 6 yards per carry against them and have that success, it went down. I'm going up over 65.5 yards on the ground for Isaiah Pacheco, thinking the Chiefs are going to be ahead, and he's going to be in line for a similar workload of maybe not 24, but 18 to 20 carries in this game.
Yeah, I think neither team is going to play keep away necessarily, but both teams are going to try to control the clock. I don't think either team really wants this to be 38 to 35, right? They want to kind of tramp it down, and certainly the Niners will do what they can on their side, because Mahomes, how many times has Mahomes gone 75 yards in a minute and a half to win a football game, right? So they don't want it to be a scenario where they can't control the clock. They don't want it to be a scenario where it's necessarily a three-point game or anything like that, but you have to do what you can to limit the opportunities are. If Mahomes is doing his thing and they can't get to him and he's sitting back in the pocket picking them apart, it's going to be a long day for the Niners. So I think it's very reasonable to think the game will be close, like 1-score game for a good deal of time here. I think that's totally fair. You never know, right? You never know. But I think that is totally fair. And I think that looking at Pacheco and thinking 18 carries, if I'm Andy Reid, I might have 18 written on my sheet. Like, I might want to get him 18 carries and think that if I get that number or above, we got a good chance to win the football game.
Right. So that's kind of where I'm at there. I'm thinking that, if anything, Pacheco, who has been huge for them this year, and again, he didn't run well against Baltimore, but Baltimore is very tough. And look, San Francisco's tough as well. And you got to think they got to be doing something, thinking, how are we going to stop this guy after what you saw Aaron Jones do? And then the Detroit guys with Montgomery. I mean, after seeing that, they've got to make an emphasis on stopping that run, because the Chiefs will start burning them there. If they're just thinking Kelce, Rice, they're going to burn them on the ground. And so that's something that I'm really watching out for. And that's a serious prop that I've been looking at and actually placed already. So that bet's in. And actually, I'm a little frustrated, Ray, because normally you see these props go up.
Good, huh?
This one went down a yard. Yesterday, it was at 66.5, and it was starting to get juiced. I don't know what happened. Maybe the books want more bets on it or something for the over, but it's at 65.5, and I think they're going over. And Ray, now if you'll indulge me a little bit for a minute, another bet that I would make, I'd be fine making, and these fun props, the heads, tails, the items of clothing of the performer or whoever's doing the national anthem, Reba McEntire. Also, you got to be careful with a lot of these fun props. The Gatorade color, you just got to be careful. However, Ray, because I, used to be your producer and I have a lot of producing experience now, thinking from a show flow, what would fit best when you have Usher as your halftime act? Ray, if Usher does not lead with the song, Yeah, which, by the way, you want side performers, you bring in Lil Jon immediately. If you don't start, what? If you don't start the Super Bowl with Yeah, you're doing it wrong. A lot of people think, and I've seen Maroon 5 do this, they start with their first hit. Like they started with I forgot what their first hit. It's getting harder to breathe. They started with that one. They didn't start with their main poppy song. For Usher, if you start with My Way, it doesn't make sense. You want to start with a punch in the face right there. You want to get the audience going so they're not going to the bathroom. You want to get them ready to go in their pants and they stay in their seats. You start with Yeah, and you bring in Lil Jon. And I'm seeing that on FanDuel Sportsbook at plus 650. A lot of people think My Way it's going to be because that was his first big song. No, you got to start with Yeah. Ray, you remember that back in 2004 when Yeah was the most popular song out there, and it brings in Lil Jon immediately. So that's part of the production angle I have in mind.
Well, I think there's a difference too. Like when you talk about heads or tails, the odds are 50-50.
Right.
Like there's no, and what's Usher? You said 650?
Plus 650 for Yeah being the first.
Yeah.
one.
So, I mean, that's, if you're going to do one of these bets that's kind of we don't really know,
right?
Plus 650 or 100, like it's like why not at least roll the dice on something that could bring a return? I was never an Usher guy. I don't really remember 2004.
It shows our age, Ray. You were Usher to me was like Tears for Fears to you back in your day, so something like that.
Okay,
I don't know.
Okay,
but I'll say that one of the props that I had been good at predicting the over on the songs played, but a lot of these acts now have multiple artists, and that, Ray, that takes time. The Super Bowl halftime show can only go on for so long. It's actually a pretty short performance.
Right.
The transition sometimes from artist to artist when another artist is being featured, the transition takes time, and also the artist then will over dramatize essentially their big song if they're being featured, and that also tacks on the time as well. Right. So that's why with the song total being 8.5, you just stay away from that because you don't know how many musical acts they're going to be. If it was just one artist with maybe one special feature, you'd bet it. But with multiple artists, the time factor, you stay away from those prop bets. I'm guessing you stay away from all these silly prop bets.
I personally do. That's not my jam. As folks can see there on the screen, for $19.99, you get access to our all-in NFL package, which includes the Super Bowl betting guide. So where we review that, Justin and the crew obviously be heavily involved in all that. It also gets you the off-season coverage so that you can basically get franchise mode. So you can look at franchise mode. So you can kind of get ready for the NFL draft. And that package, by the way, includes access to all the DFS, seasonal, and betting. So it's a great deal for the rest of the week, and it also includes postseason stuff. So it's not just for the next week. So that's $19.99 if people want to get involved there. But yeah, no, I am not a prop guy when it comes to, what color shoes someone is wearing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing's just not my jam, Justin.
Right. By the way, Ray, I gave my opinion regarding tight end props here with Travis Kelce. Even with it juiced, I'm fine with the over 6.5. It has to move to 7.5 before we hit the actual game. I think it's going to. What about you for tight end props? Anything that you're feeling?
Not really. I mean, I can throw it up on the screen real quick again. The Kelce, I would go the over, but I'm not going to take it. I don't like the odds. Right. I think the same thing with Kittle. I think he catches 4 balls. But I don't like the odds there. So I'd be out on that. I'd be more inclined to do the yardage on Kelce at the minus 130. I'd take that one. Kittle at 47.5. I'd probably take that. I'd favor the Kelce one over the Kittle one if I was going to go there. And then the anytime touchdown. I mean, I'd go Kelce. I mean, he's setting records with Jerry Rice in terms of postseason scoring.
And minus 110's not bad.
Not bad at all. Yeah. And there are so many weapons with the Niners. Kittle generally is not Mr. Goal Line. He's not catching passes from the 4-yard line. He's taking things from, outside or whatever. So he's not as much of an option right down in the green zone, if you will, as Kelce is. So I'd probably go with the Kelce one there over Kittle if I was talking touchdowns.
Little tight end Super Bowl talk continues. I know Ray's sick of the analysis here, but Ray, just a couple more days and you're done, my man. And then guess what? It's basketball, it's hockey, and it's baseball that becomes the central focus. And that's where we move on to talking about a little bit of baseball before we hit hoops. And on Fantasy Sports Daily, when you're a part of fantasyguru.com and you go to the baseball section, you are fed for days. It's like my mother cooking for me because there's always food on the table, just like there are always new articles being sent out into the universe from Ray Flowers. And Ray, let's talk about the averages you need to know from a historical standpoint. And gloves off, full disclosure. And I've talked about this with Ray before. Analytics in sports. I understand basketball analytics. I understand them, but there's not nearly as many, in my opinion, to be as concerned with and to have to focus on as there are in baseball. And Ray, when it comes to the analytics and knowing the history, before we start diving into which ones we as fantasy players should prioritize over these zillion analytics for hitters and pitchers, why is this important? Why is it important for you to put out not one, but two articles separating and charts separating hitting and pitching to know the history of these averages going into our drafts?
I would say at the start, there's also a sabermetric primer article, which is available at the site. And it talks about like kind of a paragraph of everything, right? Like this is what this is. This is what this is. This is what this is. I'll start by saying that a lot of this stuff, including what you see on the screen, some of it's extremely important. Some of it's kind of important. Some of it's just kind of nice to know stuff. You can play fantasy baseball the way you've always played it and never look at any of the advanced stuff and have a good time. And if that's your thing, do it. Like, I think that, you know, for me, I want to get in nuts and bolts and charts and graphs. Like, that's me, right? I think it gives you an advantage to do that, but I don't think you have to do that. What I think can often happen, Justin, is people start getting involved in the deeper look at the stats and everything with baseball in particular. And they get to a point where they don't become obsessed, but they become hyper-focused on the one thing that they're looking at. And we try to do things like weighted runs created plus or WOBA or WAR. We try to create like a one number that does everything kind of thing. Okay, but the one number that does everything, what is the application of that to the fantasy game? Knowing someone's got a great WAR, terrific. What does that do for me in the fantasy game? If I'm playing a 5x5 fantasy game, the guy's WAR has nothing to do with what I need to know. It's not, I don't care about his base running necessarily. I certainly don't care about his defense. I don't care, right? So I think that having a knowledge base that sprinkles in these things is good. Being hyper-focused on them can lead you down the wrong path. And when you're new and you're starting to kick the tires for the first time, take a holistic approach, right? Because what I see is people say, like, batting average of balls in play is a perfect example. That was something that, 15 years ago, no one talked about. 10 years ago, people started talking about it. I feel like 7 or 8 years ago, it became the thing. And that's all anyone talked about. As if batting average of balls in play was the only thing that mattered. Well, if it's high, it's going to go down. If it's low, it's going to go up. And it's like, well, yeah, in general. But what if the guy isn't hitting the ball as hard? What if the guy's not pulling the baseball like he used to? What if there's an injury that he's dealing? So I think that's one of the big issues, Justin, is people really, they want to dive in and get more information, which we try to provide at fantasyguru.com. But it doesn't mean everyone has to read every article and flip through every tab on an Excel sheet and that kind of thing. I don't want people to get bogged down with that to the point where they're confused and not enjoying the experience of playing the game.
So then let me ask you this here, because I used to, as someone who's been in content creation for over a decade, including baseball as well. And I used to do a lot of stock watch videos regarding trending players and to learn about the trends and especially get ahead of the game. That's where you check this big, long list of analytics. And Ray, for me, and I even came to you a few years ago when I was doing this, very overwhelmed because I wanted to just give more than, well, like he scored an RBI in 6 of his last 8 games. I wanted to give the audience a little bit more than that so they would learn. Right. And I said, Ray, and remember this conversation, we've had multiple. Ray, a lot of the things I'm looking at on-base percentage. I'm looking at BABIP as well for the luck factor, but also I'm looking at exit velocity, hard hit percentage too, and ground ball to fly ball rate and everything. And, who hits the percentage of ground balls versus percentage of fly balls. I was looking at all these different things, and what it came down to for me, Ray, was, understanding BABIP, and with all of those that I just rattled off, is there an analytic that maybe we shouldn't have to focus on if we're not trying to completely learn about every little bit of the game? Like, for instance, hard hit rate, is that very important, or should we put that off to the side and it's dependent on what pitchers the hitter has faced over the last month to show improvement? What can we maybe put off to the side, and what can beginner fantasy players really look to focus on in these analytics?
Well, it's great, perfect question. And if we're looking at averages, to know here in that there's a baseball, there's a pitching one and a hitting one. In the hitting one, I've got a chart there that talks about batted ball type, since you mentioned it. The OPS on ground balls is 514 last year for the league. 514 is terrible. That's like a pitcher, right? For fly balls, it's 884. Now we're in the zone of making an all-star team. For line drives, it's 1,500. Now you're the greatest player who's ever lived. So understanding that, we can work with fly balls, we can work with line drives. Ground balls aren't great. Okay, that's the general position. But is it Rowdy Tellez hitting the ground ball, or is it Esteury Ruiz hitting the ground ball? Like, we want Rowdy Tellez to get the ball in the air. If his ground ball rate goes up, that's not good.
Right.
Esteury Ruiz, we don't ever want him to hit the ball in the air, hit everything on the ground. So I think that the filtering out process has to include multiple things. One, it has to include who the player is, because, power, speed, that kind of thing. Pitching too, breaking ball pitcher, ground ball pitcher, strikeout guy. You have to factor in who the player is. Then you have to start looking at the measurements through that lens. Then you have to understand that the measurements you're looking at, they need time. And people don't want to hear this. Like batting average and balls in play. Studies have shown you need at least 750 or 800 plate appearances for that number to normalize. No one gets 800 plate appearances in a season.
Right. I was like, is this over like a 3-year span?
Yeah.
Like that?
So that's the thing. You'll see a guy
get injured. Nobody's like, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the problem. Like, people want to make these decisions in 2 weeks, and that's something that the folks will see once the season gets going. I'm going to sit here and say for the first month, no, because we need sample size. So I think sample size is very important. I think that if we're talking about, again, what you need to know, we have to tailor what we're discussing to the fantasy space. You asked about StatCast data, so let's talk about that directly. That's a perfect one. That's newer for those people that don't really know. Since about 2015, we've had the ability to start tracking the angle the ball comes off the bat, the velocity the ball comes off the bat, and we start to build models that way. Because we talked about Luis Arias on the show yesterday. He's a guy who the StatCast data says is terrible. Terrible. Why is he not terrible? Because he never strikes out, because he doesn't expand the strike zone, because he doesn't ever pop a ball up on the infield, and because he sprays the ball all over the field. He can hit any pitch in any part of the zone all over the field. So his StatCast numbers say he doesn't do anything, but he's actually doing a ton. Then you look at Giancarlo Stanton, who the StatCast numbers say is fantastic. And what does Giancarlo Stanton do? Pull a hamstring every time he runs to first base. So it doesn't matter. I think that if you had to boil it down, you would say barrel rate is probably the one of the StatCast data to look at most directly, because that combines your ability to hit the ball with velocity and the frequency that you do that. So it'd probably be barrel rate. And, there's articles at the website too that talk about this, with pitching and hitting, barrel rate and strikeout rate. Like, how many times do you make contact, and how often are you really hitting it on the nuts? That sounds like a pretty good thing to do, right? So that to me, I think, is probably the best place if we're talking the StatCast data, is look at the barrel rate. But there is more to it than that, because you could barrel a ball, once every 3 games. And if you strike out 35% of the time, it doesn't really matter, because you're just not putting the ball in play enough.
And Ray, this is excellent info to know. And again, this is why you have all these specified articles that just continue to come out on fantasyguru.com. So make sure you get in to win. Ray with baseball, that's why he is the Oracle, labeled the Oracle. I believe that was back in 2010 or 2011, one of those 2 years here. I'm like the Ray Flowers historian for those that didn't know. Ray, let's switch it up to pitching for a few minutes, because I just want to ask you the difference between a couple of these analytics here.
Okay, sure.
I noticed that on your charts you have, I'm going to sound like such a rookie, K/BB, so strikeouts / walks, and then you've got strikeouts - walk percentage.
Right.
What the hell are the differences between the two?
And that's a fantastic question. That I've written so many articles. I'm writing them behind the scenes.
You don't know.
No, I know the answer to the question. I'm trying to see if I posted the article on that yet.
You did, because it was in your separate pictures.
Okay. But I actually wrote an article about it too, not just the charts. And this is again. Okay, so back in the day, we wanted to know if a guy had 200 strikeouts or 170 strikeouts, right? Where's the 225 strikeouts? And that's how we drafted guys 25 years ago. What we were doing without realizing what we were doing, though, is we were looking just at the volume and not looking at the context of how the actual performance has occurred. And what I mean by that is if you throw 200 innings, you're going to get 190 strikeouts. Framber Valdez, is he a big strikeout guy? Not really, but he's throwing 200 innings every year, so his strikeout number is high. K per 9 is the next step. K per 9 or K minus strikeout minus walk ratio tells you how many strikeouts minus how many walks, or it tells you how many strikeouts per 9 innings. And it's very easy for you or I or anyone who's even someone new to the game, a 10-year-old kid who doesn't understand fancy math can say he had 8 strikeouts in 8 innings. All right, that's 1 inning over 9 innings. He's got a 9 strikeout per 9, right? It's very simple, very easy to understand. The problem with that is we need to take into account the context of when the strikeouts happen. If I face 3 batters, I get 2 grounders and a strikeout. That's fantastic, right? But my K per 9 is 1. What happens if I face 8 batters and I strike out 1 guy? I still have this K per 9 of 1, right. But now I have 1 strikeout in 8 batters faced, whereas in the K per 9, it's 1 strikeout for 3 batters faced. So the ratio, the percentage, the strikeout rate, K, percentage minus walk percentage, that takes into account plate appearances. Because I'd love to know that the guy has 1 strikeout an inning, and it's 1 strikeout an inning in both scenarios, but in one scenario it was against 3 batters, and one scenario it was against 8 batters. So actually, the guy that's more dominant is the guy that did it 1 and 3 than in 1 and 8. K per 9 only shows you the volume overall. K rate shows you the context, which tells you, well, this guy did it in 1 and 3 or 1 and 8.
So then why look at K per 9 then if K rate then gives you a more accurate lead-in to how the player is actually performing?
Yeah. So you say you don't understand that. You've got it totally locked down.
Well, it's just I'm looking at again, and I see this and I'm just like, is this the same thing? Did Ray accidentally put this twice? But you're great. You're so detailed with this stuff that it's just, I had no idea. I knew K per 9, but I didn't know there was this extra analytic. There are just so many, Ray. And that's why I was telling you before, as someone who considers himself a medium fantasy baseball player, meaning I play in leagues every year. I play DFS. I place bets as well. I'm into the league. But when it comes to all these analytics, it's just very hard to track. Part of the reason is because it's like they don't correlate, but they do correlate. It's crazy, man.
Well, it's tough, but you asked the perfect question. So you're understanding the concept completely, and it's the perfect question. I think because think of it this way. We did batting average for years in fantasy. Most leagues still use batting average.
Of course they do.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
And I've told the story, and this is true. You can talk to my friends, not that anyone would. We went to on-base percentage in the 90s because we realized
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we did. My friends in our home league went to on-base percentage in the 1990s. I think it was 1998 was the year we did it. Because we realized getting on base was more important than batting. We recognized that 25 years ago. And as we have gone on, leagues like Tout Wars have started to say on-base percentage is more valuable. Batting average has its place, sure. But on-base percentage is more accurate in describing what's occurring, right? The success or failure of a player. We went from total strikeouts, which everyone could look up in the sports page on a Sunday morning, to strikeout per 9, which is the next level. Because we understand 9 innings, and we understand the strikeout an inning. We get that. It's very easy. All the big websites carry it. You go to the big box stores, they have that kind of stuff. The next level is what we're talking about with K rate or walk rate. And I think that the reason people don't do it is because they strikeouts was what it was. Moving to K per 9 was hard, right? Now moving from K per 9 to strikeout rate, it's hard again. So I think it's just people are slow to adjust. And luckily, the people watching us, listening to us, reading our work at fantasyguru.com, hopefully I can at least guide them in the right direction to find the tools that give them an edge. Because again, as we're talking about this in strikeouts in particular, we get a little bit of an edge. It doesn't sound like get a little bit of an edge, but if we get an edge here and we get an edge here and we get an edge here, and at the end of the day, that 1% edge is now 12% edge that we have over our competition, allows us to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ray, by the way, in my home league that I'm in, not only do we play with quality starts, but also the Ray Flowers solds was sold to this league as well. So stays like, and it actually makes it more fun to draft relievers now. You don't think, oh, now it's the 18th round and I'm done. There's no closers left or anything like that.
Right.
It makes it a lot more fun to start to think about, wow, I like using this example, the Johnny Venters of the world. That guy was like a holds master.
And he was important to his team. He was very important to his team.
He was absolutely great. So again, go to fantasyguru.com. Ray's got these charts. They're very easily laid out. They've got a zillion tabs as well. So pretty much every analytic from last year is accounted for in 2 separate articles from the hitters and the pitchers. Ray, spin the wheel and make a deal. Should we talk about surprising second baseman or should we move on to hoops? Your choice.
Let's mention 2 guys since I spent the time to create a graphic. Let's mention the 2 guys, and then we'll go to hoops. How's that? Does that sound good?
Yeah. Only because you made the graphic.
Only because it's so pretty. I mean, look, I spent so much time creating that, Justin. Come on. Give me 2 minutes, a minute a guy. How about that?
Ray, it's your show. Take all the time you want. I'm just the side guy here. You're the main attraction.
We just because this week is second base week. We'll get back to it tomorrow with Kyle when he returns. And thank you, by the way, Justin, for stepping up.
Of course, man. It's a lot of fun hanging with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Might not be the last time we hang together, by the way.
We might have, speaking of that, an announcement next week when you come to visit with us for basketball.
Ooh, is that allowed? I mean, Jeff Mans doesn't really like guests.
I don't know. We'll figure something out. We might have an announcement next week.
Might have an announcement this week. This is not an announcement that we have an announcement. This is an announcement that we might have an announcement, Ray.
Right. I don't know. And by the way, for anyone that knows me, I don't know about Justin. I don't make announcements. So if it's something good, right? It's something good.
Right.
There's breakout second baseman. We got a couple guys listed here on the board, and I think one of the biggest values, and Justin and I were joking about this before the show, is there are certain websites that people qualify at every position. You wake up and you qualify catcher. You go to bed, you qualify in right field. Right. These 2 guys in particular, Ha-Seong Kim and Luis Rengifo, they qualify at multiple positions. 3 positions for Kim, 4 positions for Rengifo. And that's huge, right? In the case of Kim, he's got speed. He almost stole 40 bases last year. In the case of Rengifo, there's a legitimate chance, looking at the way that the roster is constructed by the Angels right now, he could bat leadoff. And we've known for years, whoever hits leadoff in front of Mike Trout, like yippee-ki-yay.
Right.
The flexibility these guys bring, Justin, whether you're playing roto or head-to-head or whether you're in this format or that format, having the ability to move these guys around at multiple positions just opens up so many possibilities for your team. And I think they were both big-time surprises last year. I think that in the case of Kim, it's unlikely that he takes a step. He probably takes a little bit of a slide back, I would think. Still completely useful. And in the case of Rengifo, if he just does what he did last year, he might be in an article today, wink, wink, players to target. I think he's going to be a pretty good option for people because he's not very expensive at all if you look at the ADP.
Yep, looking at the ADP right now, and this is over the last month of action when it comes to the NFBC. And again, Ray, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but from what we've seen, I feel like in these NFBC drafts, pitching is prioritized a little bit more than hitting. I mean, we've done these draft shows together for the NFBC, and I feel like that's really where the focus is in the first few rounds. So maybe hitters are moved down just a little bit than in your standard drafts at home. But looking at over the last 30 days and seeing where these guys are being drafted, and the sample size, by the way, is nearly at 140 here, so it's legitimate. You have Kim going at around the 83 mark, and you have Rengifo going at 230. That's a value right there, Luis Rengifo.
Yeah, again, especially if he bats leadoff. I'm telling you, that's a great spot, and who knows how it works out, but a 4-category guy that could hit 20 home runs.
4-position guy as well here.
There you go. 4 good. Thank you. Yeah, that's very true. The only thing, he's not a batting average booster. He's not a steals guy. Probably should have a 3-category guy, but he's a potential 3-category guy with Justin's point, 4 positions at that price point. I think that's someone, especially if you're in a deeper league, especially if you're in someone in a league that has 14 starting spots instead of 9 or 10 like some leagues do. I think he's a very good target, Justin.
Interesting. So there right now at 230, Rengifo would essentially put that in your notes. Get ready for your fantasy football drafts and make sure you go to fantasy football. Wow. Fantasy baseball drafts. You see, this is what happens when we cross wires here at this rare point of the year. Right. But again, you're seeing the graphic right there. I mean, seasonal coverage at $40, and it's already worth it even before the season because, again, looking at Ray's stuff over the last few weeks, it's just been article after article. And I like, Ray, that a lot of your articles, they're simplified, even for people like me. You need everything simplified in life. So I think you make us understand it very much in just talking with you. Again, the K per 9 rate that we were talking about before versus the percentage, I had no idea what the difference was going in, and that's why you learn something every day. And Ray, hopefully I can teach you a little something about what's going on in the hoops world these days.
And if any of the users, by the way, again, promo code FSD20 gets you 20% discount on all the products. You can get the baseball product. It's full season. You can ask questions in Discord. So if any stuff I've said hasn't made sense, you want some more, hit me up in Discord. I'll be happy to answer your question. Let's do transition over to basketball. Normally I have Justin over as the basketball host on in the week, and this week, since he's here, let's just make it a 2-for-1 and have him, we'll switch chairs, if you will, and have Justin kind of give us his analysis here. And you can see there, the NBA All-In package includes all those other sports. It includes NHL, college basketball, PGA, MMA, soccer. So go to the website, use that promo code FSD20. It works there too. Justin, let's talk about hoops. And Joel Embiid, terrific player, having a strong season. He's going to have a procedure on his knee. He's going to miss some time. What are we thinking there? Have they announced how much time he's going to miss? And what do the Sixers do? Because that's a massive loss in their lineup.
Yeah, and they haven't. And that's a problem to me because they haven't. And it's one of those things where, they rely, this is what the Sixers have done. And any team in the future that invests in Joel Embiid will have this problem too. The offense centers around Joel Embiid so much, Ray, that without Embiid, and we're already starting to see the Sixers slide a little bit, they're not going to be able to keep up with the Boston Celtics. Not like I really thought they would anyway. The Milwaukee Bucks they're going to have trouble keeping up with those teams, especially those teams that have size. And that's a big problem. And it's no disrespect to Paul Reed. He's been doing all right on offense since taking over, but Paul Reed isn't the impact player Joel Embiid was. Ray, Joel Embiid, he plays the entire first quarter and the entire third quarter. That's how much the Sixers need Joel Embiid. And Joel Embiid has cashed us props at ridiculously high lines with only 3 quarters of basketball playing, where he's playing half the second and all of the first and the third. That's how he's always played. It's a major impact loss. His MVP chances were out the door to begin with before this injury because he was only ready now to qualify for these awards, which I'm fine with. Mm-hmm. You have to play a certain number of games. So Joel Embiid's not going to qualify for the MVP anymore. And that's sad because he has been the best player in basketball this year. But the Sixers, to me, now led by Tyrese Maxey, it's going to be a lot of him. It's going to be a lot of Tobias Harris. And it's going to be a lot of Kelly Oubre Jr., who, Ray, if you remember, got hit by a car back in December. And then a month later, or end of November, a month later, was playing. That's going to be a problem. And that's large shoes to fill. So for now, we're going to take advantage in DFS. We don't know when he's going to be back. Should be back before the playoffs, but that is unconfirmed. But soon enough, Ray, a lot of these price points are going to go up so high that it's going to be very hard to be able to trust Philadelphia for DFS. Right now, we can. In the next few weeks, while these players start to produce more, prices get hiked up. Not going to happen.
So Embiid's knocked out of the mix, Justin, as you noted, for the MVP voting. Who are we pivoting to? I mean, is there someone that you're looking at in the futures and you're thinking that's a bet I'd like to place? We're talking MVP. What do you think? Because again, it's kind of a popularity contest at some point. So, okay, 2-part question. 1, who do you think is someone to consider? And 2, would you place that bet? Because it's not always, it's tough how to define it, right? Sometimes it's the best player on the best team. Sometimes it's the guy with the best stats. You know what I'm saying?
Right, of course. So for me, if you're going to look to place a bet, and I'm looking based on the odds on DraftKings here, I mean, Nikola Jokic to me is the standout at minus 155. The league does not want to give the MVP to Jokic. For some reason, they're trying to turn him into this heel bad guy who doesn't work as hard because he likes to party a little bit. I mean, who doesn't like to party a little bit? I mean, we all do. So don't vilify him because of that. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at plus 230, solid odds for him. Right now, the Thunder are tied for first place in the Western Conference. Talk with Jeff Mans on his One Man's Opinion weekly podcast, which you can catch all over the place. Apple, Spotify, it's everywhere. But we talked about the Oklahoma City Thunder being that team that we're excited about to see move up in the standings. This is their anchor right here, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Guy could do a little bit of everything. Not really the best defender, though, but he provides so much production, kind of like Tyrese Halliburton does for the Pacers, except SGA is a better version of Halliburton, in my opinion. plus 230, and I think the Thunder are going to stay towards the top, if not at the top of the standings. They'll be in that mix in that top 3, definitely top 4, and that should keep him in contention to win. So SGA at plus 230, I'm liking those odds right there.
We've talked previously about Wembanyama, Victor Wembanyama, the youngster, who I think weighs less than I do, despite being 7'9". Greek Freak, we're hearing this comp. Does this make any sense? Should we be making any comps to a guy that's so young and obviously still developing? And talk to us about Wembanyama. And last time we discussed, he was playing 20 minutes a game. Has that changed, Justin?
That has changed. Now he's up to 30 now, which is great. And he has been playing back-to-backs a little bit too, but they're definitely babying him along because they don't want him to get hurt. Part of that is because of his frame. He needs to put on more muscle. And the only comparison to Giannis that you could fairly make is body shape, because when Giannis came in, he looked like Wembanyama. He was very skinny, and then he put on pounds and pounds of mass, and then he became a lot more dominant of a player, a lot more dominant of a driver. For Wembanyama is a solid shooter, so he'll give up the drive to take a shot from the elbow at times. But here's the thing with him. He's not a good defender. He's just not. And whenever we focus on anything regarding who the Spurs are playing, it's always, what's Wemby going to do? What's Wemby going to do? But what I focus on, Ray, when it comes to bets for the Elite Mafia, is how we're going to attack Wemby. Do we have a center that's going to face him like a Rudy Gobert, like a Jakob Poeltl, which your point prop will only be sitting at 12.5, 13.5, and I'm going to go over every single time unless I'm not seeing shot volume in a recent set of games. Then I'll stay away. Now, the bigger centers, obviously, their points are going to be skyrocketed, and I've been trying to stay in the teens for point props lately for the most part. And Ray, I've been attacking this guy again and again and again with bad defensive centers that could lose their playing time, with good defensive centers who don't get a ton of volume. He gives up a lot of points. And Ray, that's because you know what he doesn't? He doesn't use his butt. He doesn't use his rear end.
Does he have a butt?
He stands there straight up. But the problem is you could sneak right under the basket, and then you can box him out. That's what these centers are doing. It's so simple. I don't know why Greg Popovich hasn't seen it. Okay, so we're going to keep attacking the Spurs, and we're going to keep attacking Victor Wembanyama. The pace is going to always be fast when you're facing the Spurs. They don't defend at all. Wembanyama, he can block as many shots as he wants, does not make him a good on-the-ball defender. And opposing centers with bigger mass are able to box him out and take advantage of him in the low block.
You mentioned earlier in the show, Justin, that there's some ins and outs of baseball you're still trying to grasp. I will freely admit I'm still trying to grasp ins and outs of basketball, not the game itself, but just kind of where it's at and how it operates. The trade deadline is passed, right?
No, it's coming up. It's coming up in 2 days.
It's coming up. So it's coming up Thursday. Okay, yes. Okay. So maybe I did understand. What are we? I thought it was. Is there? By the way, this is what I was going to say. Is there a process like in baseball? There used to be a process where you could go through the waiver wires and everything. If the trade deadline passes, can you still change teams, or is that a hard end of it?
You can, but you have to be released. And then when you're released, you go through like a couple of days where you're on waivers, kind of like in a fantasy league. But here's the deal. The object of the game, if you're the team, is so the player doesn't get claimed. Because if the player gets claimed, you're paying his contract that he would have been owed. Player goes unclaimed, then you could sign him for a veteran's minimum deal if you need him for a month or 2 or 3 in the playoffs, and that's it, or a 10-day contract, and you could sign him to a couple of 10-day contracts before having to make the decision whether you sign the player for the season. So the answer is yes, but not via trade.
Okay. So the trade deadline is coming up Thursday.
Yes.
Who are the big names? Are there a few names? Is there something you're expecting to happen? Is there something you're not expecting to happen? Talk us through the actual trade deadline a little bit.
Well, the Lakers are starting to play a little bit better. I'm starting to wonder if they're going to try to make a move. And, D'Angelo Russell, I feel so bad for this guy. He's getting booed out by everybody there at Crypto.com Arena. They want him out, and I don't blame him. Instant offense, no defense. I think he could be on the move. I think Zach LaVine, I've been talking with you and Kyle. He's like, to me, no. He was the number 1 seed. He got hurt, and he's now going to miss months. So no one's going to trade for him now. He's just not going to play. Probably done for the year at this point. Bruce Brown, who was in the trade for Pascal Siakam, who's right now just hanging in Toronto, big-time key contributor to the Denver Nuggets championship team last year. To see this guy traded just like that was a little bit shocking to me. But he's someone that if I'm a contending team, I'm looking dead in the eye, want this guy for his ability to play 2 ways. So also with the Sixers, wonder, because the Bulls have been involved in a lot of trade rumors, I wonder if the Sixers try to go after someone like an Andre Drummond to help out Paul Reed while Joel Embiid's out. Because if there's anything Philadelphia can do, they can try to put themselves in positions to at least have a home series, and that would mean being the 4th seed. So that's still in sight, but at the end of the day, Ray, they need a big man to help plug up that lane because Paul Reed's not going to be able to do it himself.
The Rockets in Memphis, Grizzlies made a trade, and we had a couple of second-round picks and Victor Oladipo going for Steve Adams. Adams is hurt. Kind of talk us through the process there, because on the surface, it looks like kind of what's going on.
Sure. So Adams is owed this year and next year. The following year, he's an unrestricted free agent. So next year, he becomes a valuable asset as an expiring contract. He's due about $12.5 million. And that's both years over the next couple of years. So still $25 million on this contract. But I'll say this, when it comes to Steven Adams, he's not going to play any basketball. He had surgery back in, I believe it was late October on his knee. He's not going to play this year. But next year, Alperen Şengün, I love him. He's next year, I feel like we're going to see him grow even more on the defensive end. Because now, if you're Houston and you've got Şengün and you've got Adams, who you'll need to play, 18 minutes off the bench, that's scary. This Rockets team is solid defensively, but it's just not working out for some reason offensively, and they're not showing in the standings as much as they were earlier in the year. They've fallen. With Steven Adams there, good tutelage for the young Alperen Şengün to become a better defender, and also having that 1-2 punch right there and Adams coming off the bench, that's going to make their front court scary. It's already scary. Jabari Smith, a good defender, bolsters them, but that's a move for next year, which I like because Şengün needs to learn a little bit more about the defensive side.
Let's transition to tonight in the DFS space, Justin. You obviously cover it for us at fantasyguru.com. You're in Discord. All that stuff is great. I know because I do the cash game breakdown for Major League Baseball. When FanDuel and DraftKings have a day, and this happens frequently, where they don't have the same games on the slate. And tonight we have an example that FanDuel's got 7 games on the slate. DraftKings has got 6. I hate that as an analyst. I'm sure you don't like it very much as an analyst either. Yeah. How do you handle it? Like for yourself, how do you handle it? And for the people listening, watching, reading, how do they handle these uneven slates? What's the best way to look at it?
So what I do for everybody out there, and that's taking questionables into consideration as well, I'll make it a little bit heavier of a write-up than I normally would. And that really stinks that I have to do that. But for all of those that just want to play on DraftKings, it's a different strategy, Ray. It's 2 completely different strategies. And when you're adding in players on one slate like Giannis and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, that makes a world of difference right there. It's annoying. If it's 2 crappy teams, then we don't really have to worry about it too much. I've got to worry about all this stuff. So because of that, Ray, what I do is normally in a 7-game or 6-game slate, I'll put 5 players with write-ups per position. Also a couple of values, but 5 write-ups. I'll maybe make it like some of the positions a little bit heavier. Maybe you'll see a 6th player. That way, if you're playing just on DraftKings, you have more of a sample size to choose from the article. And if you're playing on FanDuel for this one, you also get those players included as well. So it's annoying. It's 2 separate strategies. Sometimes the big analysis would be, just go for the bigger slate. But people don't like playing on FanDuel. People like the differences that DraftKings provides, the flexibility they provide. So with that, I try to adhere to both slates, Ray, and I make it a little heavier, and I write in red the players and the teams listed that are only for 1 slate as opposed to 2. It's annoying, and Ray, we've seen it where you have a 2-game separation, and that makes it even worse. So at least it's 1 game, but it sucks that it's a game like Suns-Bucks where there's just a lot of fantasy potential.
Yeah, I always hate that. You get all excited about a play, and then you check it, and you're like, it's only on the 1 slate. Damn it. Right. I can still list it. But...
And then people don't realize it, and they go, Fensty, a lot of our subscribers, they're getting it. But sometimes people go, Fensty, where's Giannis? Yeah. And I'm like, bro, it's only the 6 games. And that's because, Ray, in DFS NBA, these sites are trying to isolate the late game. So, A, the East Coasters don't have to stay up until 1:30 in the morning to see how they did in their tournaments. And B, the West Coasters, like yourselves, can still get in on the action in case they're working late, can't get in on the main slate. So, hey, there's at least a showdown or a late 3-game turbo slate that you could get in on.
Let's get in a little bit more depth before we end the show here, Justin, on the DFS slate tonight. We'll move beyond who's here, who's not there. Do you have a couple of plays you want to share with the listeners? I know the full write-up and all of that, but are there a couple of guys or situations you want to highlight for this evening's matchup?
Memphis Grizzlies might have to sign Ray Flowers to play for them because it's not even a joke. Everybody's hurt on their team. Jaren Jackson is doubtful tonight. Vince Williams is questionable. No Ja, no Marcus Smart. I mean, they've got just about no Desmond Bane. Everybody's out, it seems like. So, unfortunately, our bad chalk but cheap value is going to be with the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. So, who we're going to be looking at, still waiting to see how everything else shakes out, but that's where our value lies. The Rockets-Pacers game has a total of 242.5. No Fred VanVleet. So immediately we were just talking about Şengün. Miles Turner for Indiana is a bad defender to begin with. Now Şengün not only has his points and boards potential lifted, but the ceiling on his assists, because he's a good passer, is lifted as well with no VanVleet. So no VanVleet puts a bump into obviously Jalen Green, who we're going to prioritize. But Alperen Şengün becomes such a more attractive play now, and even a Jabari Smith should pick up more shots as well. So I'm looking at Houston in a nice pace-up spot.
Well, by the way, one of our users here at the comment, where is it? D-Money just said, thanks, Justin, for the PG play yesterday. So
yeah, we had a 2.5 assist prop. And it's funny because Jeff Mans put 2.5 assists on Jonathan Kuminga of the Warriors, your Warriors. Mm-hmm. And both of us were kind of texting back and forth. We're like, it's early. We got to be careful. No assists. And then look at that. Second half, both went over like that. You look at 2.5 assists, Ray, and you're like, it's a trap. You're thinking you're Admiral Akbar. Paul George, he had been passing off a lot more. And when you're in a high-octane environment, meaning the pace is going to be sped up, you're going to have more possessions. Pace translates to possessions. And for an assist prop that low, I was comfortable with it for PG.
Look at that. Parlay the
assist. There you go, D-Money Sports Cards.
Yeah.
You'll be able to buy more D-Money Sports Cards with that.
You can be able to take Justin to dinner.
Yes.
You have the Watch Along Wednesday. We talk about that. You know, we hit on it.
It's Tuesday this week, though.
So, yeah, talk about that.
Yes. So, why it's Tuesday or just Watch Along Wednesday?
Oh, but it's both.
Okay.
The whole thing.
Well, all right. So, I'll say this. Selfishly, my birthday is tomorrow. So, I'm a chalk play. And to be a chalk play, I got to be able to maybe get away just a little bit here, have some time with the wife. But so instead of Watch Along Wednesday, it's Tune In Tuesday just for tonight. What I do is I sit in the DFS NBA Discord room. I also float to the betting Discord as well for NBA, but I sit mainly in the DFS NBA Discord room and I just watch games and I give my on-the-fly analysis, what I'm seeing on the court, what I'm trying to attack, what's not working with these teams, what went right and what went wrong from the DFS NBA write-up, Ray, because the only way to learn about these teams and players truly is by watching the game. So I'll be in there. We'll all be on tilt following our action together tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. Tune in Tuesday. Join us in the DFS NBA Discord.
Yeah, that's obviously Justin Fensterman. I'm Ray Flowers. Kind of wrapping things up here. Kyle will be back tomorrow. Want everyone to thank Justin with me for being on the show today. Justin, thank you.
Really absolutely, man. Thanks for tolerating me.
Oh, yeah, it was great too. I think we did a good job. We hit 3 sports too, which is good.
Yes.
Everyone remember, you can see it on the screen there. And to reiterate, that promo code's FSD20, FSD20. That gets you a 20% discount on all the products, whether it's the basketball that Justin does, whether it's football, whether it's baseball, NASCAR, all the products. You can get, and I mentioned this too. If you want to buy a T-shirt that says the Oracle on it, Justin mentioned this earlier, you can get the Oracle Gnome and use the FSD20 and get a 20% discount. So that's all available there. We've got the NFL package for $19.99, includes DFS, betting, and seasonal. Get you the Super Bowl betting package as well. So check that out. It's $40 right now if you use the promo code FSD20 on the baseball product. It's the early bird pricing, so get in now. Again, Justin's basketball product is part of a whole group of sports that we talked about earlier. Let me just throw it up here. Where is it? There.
Betting and DFS, though, separate, though. That's something to note, too, because, again, join the DFS. If you're placing bets and you have the betting package, upgrade. Join DFS. Why? Because you'll be able to find your own bets. Ask all the Underdog and Prize Picks players out there that are part of our subs, because you can use the article I write up to find bets through that. So it correlates. So you should have it all. And that's why you need to go all in beyond the NBA all-in package.
Yeah. And if you have a question about you wanting to upgrade, right? Well, guys, I already have this is how you do it. support@fantasyguru.com. Send an email, support@fantasyguru.com. Give me your username and say, hey, look, I've got this package. I want to add that. Ted Schuster, you can also hit him up in Discord. Ted is kind of the guy that handles that, and he'll be happy to kick you down a deal because we want to keep you happy. We want to keep you with us. We want to help you get more involved. If you want to get more involved, that's kind of the whole point of all this. So, Justin, it's been a great show here. Any parting words of wisdom? Anything you want to share? Do you have you seem to have a little basketball today. You don't have your full basketball. Is that because you were hosting?
Yeah, you know what, Ray? I'll tell you why. I'll turn my camera around. I got this, I'm a local music radio DJ as well. I spin classic oldies. I was actually at a meeting there in the town where my station is, Thurmont, Maryland. What
station? Tell the folks.
WTHU 1450 AM. If you're in the state of Maryland and you're riding up there in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania as well, and also in Frederick County in Maryland, you'll be able to hear me from 3 to 6 p.m. I have a voice track, all classic oldies rock show. It's a lot of fun. And behind me, as you see, because I wanted to be more organized this year, one of my resolutions, I have a calendar up there, and I thought it made it look a little bit messy and cluttered. But yeah, so. Oh. But next week, when I'm if invited back as a guest, I will make sure that I have that little mini basketball hoop that not only my kid plays on, but I play on too, because basketball is awesome. I'll have it available for all of you to see.
We used to have the Dr. J one that was, 3 feet, 4 feet. It was cardboard with the hoop that was probably the size of almost like a size 5 soccer ball, or size 4 soccer ball, excuse me. And then we taped it onto a stool. Duct tape. So then the thing became like 6 feet, and we used to dunk on that thing all the time. But the ball was, not a little. It was we used to kill that thing. Cardboard flying everywhere. That thing had duct tape. That was a lot of fun.
Indoor bedroom basketball where you take like the little plastic hoop and you try to take your closet door and close it on it. So it's the most underrated room activity there is. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Justin Fensterman, Ray Flowers. Justin, by the way, social media, where can they find you?
At Fensty Sports on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, and also Instagram, and just at Fensty on TikTok as well. But mainly hanging out on X and also on Instagram as well.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and X and Threads, and I'll at the Ray Flowers.
Too many streaming services, too much social media, Ray. Can we all just have AOL again and call it a day?
I still have an AOL email address, Justin. You probably know that.
You do.
I still do. Oh, absolutely. That's
you don't have my name account, though.
That's like my private account. Yeah, it's not my work account. So, Justin, thanks again for joining us. If you missed this, we talk about this all the time. But if you missed it, understand that we always house everything here on YouTube, youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. It's always on the website as well. Go to the fantasyguru.com, click the Elite Plus tab, and you can find all the shows there. We're also on podcasts. We're on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So you can also listen to the show if you late or whatever. So I've heard some people say, "Oh, I missed the show today." You can always find the show, and you can even watch it or listen to it. We try to be a one-stop shop, if you will, with the product.
Absolutely. And when by the way, you go to fantasyguru.com, I'll plug this podcast too. And it might even be, Ray, it might be on the Elite Plus network one day too. Still applying for application there. So for certification. But Fensty's Basketball Diaries, it's a weekly basketball podcast. I read literally my game notes that I write down. I focus on a different team each week, talk some strategy, talk some news in there as well. Mainly it's me ranting about the team and talking about what I've seen on the court through the naked eye about these players, so you all can learn exactly how to watch these players and what to look for in the skill set.
He's Justin Fensterman. I'm Ray Flowers. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Sports Daily Day. We appreciate it. Kyle Elfrink will be back tomorrow. And as Justin noted, he'll be back next week as a guest. And I think we might have an announcement. So stay tuned for Justin's visit next week. Thanks for being with us, Justin. And we'll talk to you again soon, buddy.
Thanks, man.
You got it. Justin Fensterman, Ray Flowers. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.